Hi, this is Peter Godinez with Your Pivot Journey. And I tell you, I'm really excited today because I have two magnificent people, probably the two most important people in the sport of pole vaulting, and I have them right here for you. And I think you're really going to be excited about hearing these two gentlemen. And one of them is Jan Johnson. And the best way I can describe him, I have Google searched him, and his title, Pole Vault Expert. Okay, so that's what I'm going to call Jan Johnson. And we also have a compadre of his who is a famous sports doctor, Dr. Barry Bowden. And I have them together and I want them to collaborate on some information I think you're going to find fascinating. So put your seatbelt on or whatever you do in pole vaulting, get that plank going, your grip going, sip a Gatorade, and we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to turn this over to Jan Johnson since he's the executive producer of this program. So Jan, why don't you give us a few things of introduction for Barry and possibly how you two met? That would be a good start.
Well, that's a good question right there, Barry. How did we meet?
So this goes way back, approximately
20 years at least.
20 years ago, exactly. I was working on a project with UNC, the catastrophic center there, and had access to 16 years of data on catastrophic pole vaulting injuries.
Yeah.
Whenever I did one of these projects, I always asked who was the expert in the field, because I am a physician and a scientist, but certainly was not a expert in pole vaulting. Ran track, but that was the extent of it. So anyway, I think it was Fred Muir who might have put me in touch with Jan Johnson, and
that sounds right.
He has not let me down. Jan is definitely the guru and the expert in every possible way when it comes to pole vaulting.
I studied physical education and then biomechanics in school. And I was always terribly interested in science as a pole vaulter. And to me, in high school and in college, pole vaulting just seemed like science to me. And I treated it that way. And then when I retired, I started teaching. And I ran, I would see 500 to 1,000 kids a year in my pole vaulting camps and teach them method on how to pole vault. And I still greatly enjoy that. And I think that was really the touchstone. That's what got me started in doing improvements in pole vault safety. I really do. I've seen several really major bad pole vault accidents where people were seriously hurt with my own eyes. A couple of them at my own camp. Some of them where I'd be at a meet and see something, and I just felt like it could improve a great deal. Secondly, I think the rule makers in the sport are fairly naive about a lot of this. They're track and field is divided into throws, distances, sprints, jumps, and then the pole vault. And I think if we hadn't have done our work, enlarging the pads, making the pads better in a lot of different ways and all that, I think there would have been a lot more accidents. So step by step, Barry and I, and you're right, I think Fred Mueller was involved in that first one. Paul Pesquina, he helped
Correct.
too. Remember Paul?
Yeah.
And then I guess along the way, Barry and I just kept writing articles about ways to improve safety. Some of them involved equipment, and then some of them I would write, and they just involve methodology of teaching. So that's really what I've done. So it's been a career. It's hard to believe you could make a career out of that, but it really has been a career. So I'm proud of it, frankly, and it's been fun, and I still like to do it. I like kids. I don't like to see kids get hurt. I have a great place to pole vault here in my backyard where I run my camps. I live on a small farm out here. A farm, I guess. It's not really a farm. It's just a few acres with a pole vault club in the back. And I hold the ownership. I hold the liability. It's up to me to make it as safe as possible. Some of it's gymnastics type stuff like rope vaulting and high bar and other gymnastics things. And, a lot of it is pole vaulting. And I want to make it as safe as it can possibly be, because when you jump at my place, it's my liability. I buy the insurance, I do the instruction and all that. And still, in spite of all that, you'll have an accident once in a while. So that's really my side of it.
Sure, I can go ahead and get started. This was the first project that we worked on together. And this was a study where we reviewed 32 catastrophic injuries in pole vault. So these are injuries where they're either fatalities. There was an athlete that got hurt and had a permanent neurologic injury like paraplegia, or there was a serious injury like a spine injury, an intra-abdominal injury like a splenic rupture, something serious. We're not talking about ACL tears or ankle sprains or things like that. Not that they're not serious, but these are considered catastrophic. So we looked at 32 injuries over a 16-year period, and that may not seem like a lot, but when you take into account the fact that pole vaulting doesn't have a lot of participants, the incidence was actually the highest of any sport prior to 2003. And the number of injuries was second highest to football. So there may only be 50,000, pole vaulters. That's a high incidence, the number of injuries per participant. And half of these were deaths. These were also in the days before the internet for the most part. So who knows if there were some injuries that were being missed. Yeah. And what we found was that the majority of the injuries, I think it was 69% of the injuries occurred because of the athletes missed either the side or the back of the landing pad. Sometimes they landed with their body on the landing pad and their head hit the hard surrounding surfaces. And sometimes they just completely missed the landing pad and got injured. And then the second most common injury, and I have a video here if you want me to show it, but this is an athlete who was landing in the vault box. And this athlete did not get hurt, but you can see how close he comes to landing in that vault box.
You guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
That's Mondo Duplantis' dad.
So we showed these two mechanisms, and this study was published in 2002. And right after it was published, the following year, there were 6 catastrophic injuries, of which 3 of them were deaths. There was a pole vaulter at Penn State who died, and the family members just became very active. There were a lot of advocacy efforts. Everything sort of came together between the science, the advocacy efforts, and the NCAA and the high school federations. They all met to discuss safety. And what they ended up doing was increasing the landing pads in high school and college, and they increased them by about 68%. So significant change in the size of the landing pads. And there were other recommendations, things like the coach's box, which is a painted box in the middle of the landing pad to encourage the athletes to land in the central portion of the landing box, and also rules about padding the surrounding surfaces. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Jan?
Well, I was going to say that in 1986, the ASTM put out a specification for pole vaulting pads, landing mats, and it was too small. And I don't think they knew it was too small. I don't know who was on the committee at that time. It was 10 years before my time in it. But we, through this work, added 4 or 5 feet to the sides and to the back of the pit. And I think it pretty much ended all the serious catastrophic off the back, off the side type injuries that happened. There have been a couple, but they were on pits that were smaller. Of course, a lot of times when the ASTM comes up with a specification and the rule makers pick it up. And unfortunately, in 1986, that's what happened. So you could see this for the next 8 or 10 years, it affected the sport. People thought small pits were okay to jump on. And then you have a lot of concrete out there as underlayments under the rubberized surface of a runway. You have a lot of asphalt around pits and stuff like that. So the work we did on that helped a great deal.
Yeah. One of the downsides was the cost of the pits, because all of a sudden you have these much bigger pits, and the cost went from, maybe $5,000 to $15,000. So what you're seeing, at least, where I live, some of the high schools will just buy 1 or 2 pits and have all the vaulters go to that one, 1 or 2 high schools to do all their training.
Right. And I think that's also maybe increase the number of clubs that are out there. That's what I do here. I coach kids from about 10 or 15 high schools in the local area, but they all have pits too. I want them to have a place to pole vault so they can host meets and stuff like that. It's important. So.
And then the second mechanism that we saw was a lot of these kids landing in the vault box, and we made a few suggestions like reducing the size of the vault box and improving the pads around the vault box, making the vault box softer and teaching proper techniques so that the athletes don't release the pole prematurely, which is what I've learned from Jan, where they get into trouble and don't quite make it into the landing pad. But these were, again, just suggestions at this point. This was, early 2000. And so what we did was we decided to do a follow-up study. And the main rule changes were in 2003, mostly centered around the landing pad. And we did a follow-up study from 2003 to 2011, and we looked at these catastrophic injuries again and found that there were 19 injuries. 58% of them were major head injuries, less than before, where it was mostly head injuries in the prior study. But what we found was that we were still saw a lot of injuries from athletes landing in the vault box. The number of injuries from athletes landing to the sides or the back of the vault box was diminished significantly. And this was a great figure. I think Jan produced this. You can see the study from 82 to 98, and every arrow indicates an athlete that got hurt. And most of them were the back or the side of the landing pads. And then you can see in 2003 to 2011, I think there were only 2 injuries from athletes missing the landing pad. There were another 2 where they actually missed the landing pad, but the landing pad was not in compliance with the new rules. So we don't really count that.
Yep.
But the majority of injuries were still occurring in this vault box right in this area here.
Yep.
And if you look at the number of fatalities, which I have plotted out here, and this is pretty dramatic, but this red line right here in the middle of the figure, that demonstrates where the rule change took place. And we look at the number of fatalities, it averaged just about 1 per year before that. And after that rule change, it was 0.13 per year. And one of those was a non-compliance. So there have been 2 since 2003. When you add that up over time, that's an estimated 12 lives saved. So that's, pretty significant there, approximately 1 a year.
That's a good graph right there.
Yeah.
That explains
so that
it.
one really
that explains the first part of our work and what the effects were in a very good way.
Yeah. And so the second part is really the prevention. So we understand from this second article that, okay, the landing pad problem has mostly been solved, but there's still a problem with the vault box. And this is where Jan really took over and did some great work with doing some engineering studies and trying to make this area safer. And I'll let you take over from there, Jan.
Well, my goal was to improve safety by encouraging kids and their coaches to have people land in the center of the pit. And so that's what that PLZ is. That's the preferred landing zone. Then the outside red line on the pit there down the sides and in the back shows you really how much we increased the sides of the pit. I think we added 4 feet, almost 4 feet to the back of the pit. So, those parts were really important as well. So at the bottom of the bottom picture, you can see the work we did on the box collar, which was also our work. And the box collar helped to protect the sidewalls, the edges of the sides of the landing pit in a better way. And High School Federation and the NC2A both picked that up as rule. We did all the research on that and all the prototypes on that here to find one that would work. The problem is we can't really make the box any smaller than it is, but we could protect the upper sidewall edges in a better way. And of course, those are really dangerous if you land in there. So, and like I say, 99.9% of all boxes are plate steel set in concrete, which makes things really, really hard, of course. So anyway.
And he did some engineering work. I don't know if you want to go into more detail, where he looked at, the risk of fatality of landing in these vault boxes that are made of concrete or steel, or just some of the hard surfaces. The risk of fatality from landing from a height of 12 feet 5 inches was, way above the 100% risk of having a fatality.
It's really off the scale of what the traditional playground impact measuring device can measure. You see that picture on the top there? That's a prototype of ours also. That's a flexible bottom pan. So it's not concrete and steel, with a hard end plate and area where the pole rotates. And we reduced the impact. We reduced the potential impact attenuation there from 10,000 HIC. HIC is the acronym for head injury criteria, to about 800. Which is well within the potential, the injury impact attenuation that causes severe injuries. So that's what we're trying to do. We're really just saying, hey, we can protect the entire area around the box and inside the box and the edges of the box. And now I'm saying you can do it. You don't even need a box collar. If you just do the install the right way, it's much better. Some people don't like to have these foam pads sticking onto the inside walls. And the box collar, although it says in the rules it should be fastened to the ground or fixed to the ground, oftentimes is not. So the box collar is sliding around, and that's not good. And then probably one of the biggest problems of all, if you look at the very front edge of that box, you can see that it's below the surface of the runway. There are many injuries that happen because the front edge of the box is above the surface of the runway. And even if it's just a little tiny bit above, some people like to slide their pole on the end of the runway and into the box. Well, that little disruption of that little lip edge above the surface of the runway can cause some really bad accidents. Generally, your hands slip off the pole and you land on your back in the box under that circumstance. And I would say that probably 10 or 15, this is a guess, 10 or 15% of pole vault plant boxes have an elevated front lip. The runway wears out over time. It's installed incorrectly. It's made in such a way that the center of the box bubbles up higher. So my point is that there's a simple way to fix all those issues there. Also, if you look at the top edge of the back of that box, or the part where the pole strikes, it doesn't have to be 9 inches high. We're jumping on a box out here that's only 5 inches high at the back end, and there's rubberized track surfacing on that top edge, which is soft. That's a huge improvement in safety, because that top edge of the box right there, right below the yellow portion of the box collar, that's the most dangerous place in sports. That spot right there. If you land on that, and it's easy to land on that. Yep, your arrow's right on it. That's the most dangerous spot, no question about it. So if you come up short, that tends to be where you land. If your tip catches on the front lip, you tend to hit on there. That's a big problem right there. So we'd like to see that go away. And I think when we get all that fixed, it's done. I'm saying that you can keep the depth of the box the same, the length of the box the same. We just prefer to have a box with a hard impact area where the pole strikes, and then cushioning or flexibility everywhere else. That's what we're trying to do. So that's it.
The other point I'd like to make, even though we focused on catastrophic injuries, you got to remember, for every catastrophic injury, there's probably hundreds or thousands even of non-catastrophic injuries that are occurring via the same or similar mechanisms. So, exactly right. You're making a big change. And one of the things that Jen did is, he surveyed all of his pole vaulters at his camps. I think, there are over 5,000 vaulters that were surveyed. And the data showed that 80% of them landed in the vault box at least once during their career. So, they're not all going to have catastrophic injuries, but 80% are landing in that box. There's going to be a lot of other injuries that are occurring that can be prevented.
Heel bruise in the box is probably, I think, and I don't have the data right in front of me, but that was the most common one of all. Well, that's always a guy that comes up short and his heel slams down in the bottom of the box. And then, of course, like we were saying earlier, landing on your back in the box, like that picture of that lady we saw there a couple minutes ago. Yeah. So I don't know. Makes no sense to have it concrete right there. Can be improved dramatically. Yeah.
How many vault boxes have been installed? What percentage of the facilities out there are using the new, safer vault boxes?
I have personally gone out and installed about 40, and I purposefully wanted to do them myself. Since I run camps all over, it's pretty easy to go to places and install them. Takes about a half a day to do a good install, and I wanted to do these type of boxes in many different environments. The freeze thaw environment in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, affects the performance of a box far different than it does in an indoor elevated board runway or here in California. So we needed to watch how the cushioning materials worked. We needed to watch how the surfacing materials worked, that type of thing. And so over the past it's probably 5 to 8 years, we've done all these installs, and really, I just really wanted to watch how they work and how the longevity was. The longevity is very important, and the replaceability is also very important. If and when a box wears out, is it easy to put a new box back in? Can you transport your plant box from one place to another? So that's really what we worked on. What type of cushioning materials perform the best in the freeze thaw or outdoor environment? What type of materials were best at the bottom of the box where the pole tip strikes every time? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. It's like getting hit with a hammer right there. What do we need to do to make that work and last a long time? So I knew the project was going to take a long time, but I also knew that it was worthwhile, and we need to make it where we install safer plant boxes when installations are done, not harder plant boxes. That was really my goal, but it had to last a long time too. So that's really what I did.
Just to reinforce Jan's point with the weather, what he found was that the vault boxes in areas, Midwest like Wisconsin, where it's cold and they're sitting outside during the winter, the vault boxes may get pushed up, a couple centimeters or just enough to cause that front lip. So when somebody's running, when a vaulter's running down to plant the pole, it may catch on that front lip and throw them off.
Exactly right.
But I think his other, the survey also showed that when you went around and looked at all of the existing vault boxes, that 97% that you inspected showed that if an athlete were to fall from 12 feet 5 inches, there'd be 100% probability of a fatality. So most of the the existing vault boxes are pretty darn dangerous. I'm also curious, is there an easier way to install it? I mean, do you think there'll be a day where, you could just buy a vault box and put it in just in a matter of 30 minutes or an hour? I mean, it does sound like it's a big process. And do you think that's a deterrent to some of the schools that don't have you coming to visit and install it?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to make it where a parent and a kid could do it, or a grounds crew at a school could do it. I wanted to make it where it could be done those ways, and you didn't have to necessarily hire a contractor. To do an install outdoors into an existing runway, it's you're going to chalk the line out around the box, 37 inches wide and 150 inches long. You're going to cut it with the concrete saw. You can just get a concrete blade and do it with any saw. And then you're going to have to jackhammer out all those hard surfaces and materials. And then you're going to pack the bottom of that box. You need to dig the hole 12 inches deep. I'm suggesting that we use shredded rubber playground mulch as an underlayment. It works awesome. It lasts forever. It's really easy to handle. It's cheap. And you're going to put that in and set your grades at the front edge of the box and the back of the box. And then there's going to be a rubber piece of rubberized track surfacing that goes around the entire perimeter of the box. And once it's in, it's set. And then it's really easy to pull the box back out and move it to another location because it's going to have a concrete anchor behind it that holds the lip in place and secures it there. And then you can just glue the front edge in 1 inch. And I'm recommending between 3/4 and 1 inch below the surface of the runway for best results. That means that you're below the top of the sub base, the concrete or asphalt sub base or whatever they're using as an underlayment underneath their rubberized materials. So cost is really important too. I think the box that's needed is just flexible on the sides and the bottom, galvanized metal, and 1/4 inch plate steel where the pole strikes. You can manufacture that thing really cheap. So I don't think it's going to be a very expensive box, frankly. They're going to get 3 rubber pieces and this box that is a flexible sidewall bottom pan integrated with a hard end plate. That's where we're going with this thing. So I don't know. We'll see.
Jan, is there a place where, let's say, an athletic director can go and find out more information about, this vault box and the installation process?
They can go to my Facebook page, Pole Vault Safety. It'll be there. You can see a whole installation there at Pole Vault Safety. In fact, you can see several installations there, how they were done. VS Athletics sells this box on their website also. So I think that's where it can be done. I think the problem right now is the rule makers. I don't think the rule makers understand it, how it should be done. And I haven't seen any rule makers. And I've talked to the High School Federation, the NC2A, and the IAA and the IAAF USA Track and Field. And I don't think any of them have really taken the time to go look at one and or see about how an install is done. I really don't. Most of those people that are rule makers at those levels are coaches or former coaches, and unfortunately, I think they're kind of naive. I don't think they understand about the research that's been done and some of the accidents that have happened over the years. I think that's a little bit about what's slowing things down too.
So Jan, what is the status, or could you give us an update on the actual rules as they stand today? You went over a lot of different things with the front lip and the back plate, the changing the angle there, and the padding underneath. What is actually required and mandated currently at the high school and NCAA levels? Are any of these things mandated or in the process of being mandated?
They describe the length and width and the angles of the box. And 2 or 3 of the rule books show that the box should be installed under concrete or on top of concrete. So they don't discuss padding or protection under the box. They all say that the front edge of the box should be level with the surface of the runway, which of course leads itself to having an elevated lip eventually. You see several brands of boxes out there. See, I'm saying a box should have a turn down ledger on the front edge, right? So if this is your pull slide that slides down, it should have a 1-inch ledger on the front. That gives you something to attach to, and it also keeps the center of the box from popping up. Does it make sense? Ledger, downturn ledger in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Most boxes don't have anything there, so the water gets under them, and the front edge just pops up. So I want to do 2 things. I want to have a ledger in the front, and I want to have a position below the surface of the runway. That's what we're doing here. That's what we've done here for many years. I would never think of going out and doing a camp, for instance, where we might install 2 or 3 boxes and have an elevated front lip ever. And that's in 30 years of running camps. We just wouldn't do that. So, there's several other modifications that could be improved. The sidewalls around the area, like you see in that top picture there, can be curved outwardly a little bit. What that does is reduce the friction on the bottom of the pole. Sometimes poles break on the bottom of the pole, 9 inches from the bottom of the pole. It's because the poles rub on that top metal edge of the box all the time when they're bent or when you do a drill. So you're wearing the pole out right there. I would say at my club here, we've probably broken 4 poles in the last 20 years on the bottom of the pole, which is an extremely dangerous type of pole break, I might add. Why would that be more dangerous than a regular pole break? What do you think? Because when the pole breaks on the bottom, then just above that ledge, the pole catches on the inside of the pit right there. So if you're still holding on, it keeps you from getting into the pit. Does it make sense? It's like a spear or something that catches on the pit right there. The pole breaking on the bottom edge is probably the most dangerous in my view. And I'm a guy that broke several poles. I've probably seen hundreds of poles break. So I want to fix the whole thing. We want to fix the whole thing, and we want to make it not cost too much. That's what we're trying to do. And we want to make it where everybody or almost anybody can do it. I mean, I've sent boxes to moms. Speak at a clinic. They like the idea. Send it to the mom, and the mom and her husband and the kid go to the school and install the box. And it turns out pretty good. It's really not that difficult to do. You're going to need a jackhammer, a shovel, a wheelbarrow. You're going to need 5 or 6 bags of rubber mulch at about $3 a bag. You're going to need 190-pound bag of Quikrete, which costs about $5. And you're going to need some rubberized construction adhesive glues to glue the thing on the edges. And that's why watching that, experimenting with all those different composites and glues and things, that's why we've taken our time, because we wanted to watch how they behaved over time. Very, very important, you know. Here's another thing, you know, to pull strikes down there at the bottom of that plant box, thousands and thousands and thousands of times, it'll cup it out there eventually if you don't put a concrete anchor behind it. There's boxes out there where there's just a little bit of concrete around the rim of the box and maybe a little bit of concrete under the box. And then the place where you really need to have concrete, which is where the pull strikes over and over and over and over and over, then there's nothing. And I know that because, dude, I've gone out and taken out about 40 or 50 boxes, and you see it all the time. So the slab that is typically under a runway, a long jump or a pole vault runway or a track, really is usually only about this thick. It's only 3 or 4 inches thick. It's like the thickness of a sidewalk. So they go put the box in, and that's how thick they pour the slab, and then there's no concrete, you know, behind where the pole tip strikes. There's concrete under the box, but right there where you need it, it's not there. So that's the type of thing that goes on out there, unfortunately. So, but I don't think people would know that unless they've gone out and done a lot of installs and stuff like that. I guess when I started doing camps, and we had a lot of kids at camps, we had to make more places for them to jump at the facility. So then we would start installing plant boxes, you know. So that's really where a lot of this came from and how I know so much about it. So,
well, John, what do you think it's going to take? Excuse me, one last question. What do you think it's going to take to motivate the rule makers to come around and, you know, make this vault box safer?
I keep talking to them. What is it going to take? Probably a death. I mean, I hate to say it. Think about all the rule changes that happened. We were right there and did it. All those bad accidents that happened in, what was that, 2002 or 3? That was the year my daughter started pole vaulting. That was the year when the most changes happened, right? They were listening then because it got so much media attention and it was so bad out there. And that's really what happened, you know. So I don't know. That's what I think. Crazy, huh?
Hopefully it won't get to that point.
No, I agree. I went to the NCAA, or I didn't, but I had one of my coaching friends, Brett Witt up at UWSP. We made a rule change proposal at the Division III level of NCAA a couple months ago, just to allow a plant box with a lowered front lip, with cushioning around the perimeter and cushioning underneath, and slightly outwardly curved edges on the end plate, just to allow it, not to make it the rule, just to allow it. And they voted it down. Wow. So we've done the same thing with USA Track and Field to allow this type of box. And that was about 3 weeks ago, and they voted it down. They won't talk to me directly. I have had people go and make these rule change proposals. So I don't know. They apparently don't have any liability in it, so they don't feel any need to do anything. But if we're really not changing the depth of the box or the length of the box, and we're just showing people how to cushion things and put the hard surfaces in the right places so they're not affecting safety, seems like they should do it, but I don't know. I guess we need to hurt somebody. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it's been.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this just basically summarized some of the things that Jan was talking about. Nothing really new here, so I can go ahead and stop sharing on my side.
Okay, now you are the star right now, so why don't you go ahead and just give a summary of what you got going on? Yeah.
Okay, so no, I would just say that 20 years of some hard work and really changed the sport. I mean, we have one problem totally under control. We've reduced the number of fatalities from an average of 1 a year to 0.1 a year. Probably saved 12 plus lives. And Jan's doing some great work with the Vault Box, and hopefully we're going to see the same results over the next 10 years where that problem is eliminated. So we're heading in the right direction, and we're going to keep working away. And Jan is really doing a wonderful job with all of his research and installing the Vault Boxes. So we'll see what the next 10 years holds.
I think I've been blessed to have facility on my place where I can do research on this type of a project. It would be very difficult to find schools that would let you go out and do this type of research, especially the early research. But so many of them, when they see what I'm talking about, especially here in the Central Coast, every high school here, we have cushion plant box, every single one. In every college here, we have them. But it's going to have to change a little bit more where we just do installs with cushion boxes out there and quit putting boxes in concrete. That's really where it's going, in my opinion. So that's it. Been a long time, man. We've worked on stuff in this for so long, It all goes back to, for me, to March of 1971, when I watched my teammate Wayne Hicks go straight up in the air and come straight down and land in the box. And he was in the hospital for 2 months. Broken leg, broken shoulder, severe head injury. And he came back and pole vaulted again, but it took him 2 years to overcome all that. But I stood there, I was catching his step and his pole. I was 5 feet away, and when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. And that's why I've worked on this. Difficult. So.
I hear you, Jan. No, that was wonderful. And if I could just wrap up and just say, what you guys are doing is incredible. For those of you listening, have gone this distance, it just shows you are a special audience in terms of knowing that your passion for pole vaulting and its success as well as its safety is there. So I have to mention that Jan did do a video in regards to the installation process to give you an idea of the process, some of the costs. I think you'd be real surprised. But if you want to find out more information, subscribe to this channel. Jan will have his own playlist, and there'll be more interviews with other celebrities like Dr. Barry Bowden that will be on this particular program. So with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know Dr. Bowden's got a case to go to. They're probably waiting in the lobby right now. But that's, thank you. If you enjoyed this program, please subscribe, and we'll see you the next
Hey, Barry, are you going on a bike ride today? You going on nothing? Okay. I'm going on a bike ride right now, just so you know.
Okay.
We're going to ride bikes together someday.
The meet is officially over.